Welcome to Hope Blooms, a podcast from the Early Pregnancy Loss Association.
At EPLA, we seek to support women and families suffering early pregnancy loss by providing resources, education, and community. It is our vision that no one suffers miscarriage alone. Welcome back to Hope Blooms. I'm EPLA's Executive Director, Emily Carrington, and with me is our President, Maria Servold. Today, we are pleased to welcome our first guest to the podcast.
We are thrilled to talk to Angie Winton, President and founder of Metro Detroit Share, which is a volunteer support group of parents who have experienced the loss of babies through miscarriage, stillbirth, or early infant loss. The group was founded in 2008 and is a local chapter of the National Share organization.
Several of our board members met Angie at the International Perinatal Bereavement Conference, hosted by the Pregnancy Loss and Infant Death Alliance in St. Louis in 2018. Since that meeting, we have partnered with Metro Detroit Share, providing our small miscarriage kits for them to include in early loss bags and to distribute to hospitals and doctors' offices around Michigan. Since 2020, we have provided 1,500 small miscarriage kits to Metro Detroit Share. Angie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
First, can we get started? Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and about Metro Detroit Share?
Yes. So my venture into pregnancy loss started in 2003. I suffered the loss of our first pregnancy in December of 2003. I got pregnant the following year in 2004 with our daughter, Brooke, and unfortunately lost her full term into the pregnancy in March of 2005. Recognizing there was just such a lack of support and in the community. For her first birthday, we did a fundraiser in her honor, donated the money to a hospital program in hopes that, they would provide services, support meetings, and special remembrance events. I did the same in 2007. And as we find a lot of hospital programs just kind of go, they hit highs and then they go away. And just thought there needs to be a better system. And so thought about starting a support group. And in 2008, went to training with National Share in St. Louis and formed Metro Detroit Share and started doing support meetings in February of 2009. And we continue those. And we've added since multiple programs, including the early loss bags, keepsake support boxes for your later term and infant losses, carrying cradle donations that we donate throughout Michigan, funeral assistance, an annual remembrance walk, virtual online support, hospital support with training, and about anything else that we can do to help support families.
All of the services you provide are really amazing, and that was quite a list of things that you all do. And you said you started with the support group. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you got to where you got? How did it happen that you have so many services for families in your area?
How did that start? I think the funeral assistance started from just going to the cemetery and noting that there were babies that didn't have headstones, and it bothered me. We were very fortunate that we had really supportive family and friends, that wasn't something we had to worry about. We didn't worry about the funeral costs. We didn't worry about getting a headstone. And so that really bothered me. And so that was really the first thing we started. The Keepsake Box program started with two of our members, Tiffany and Emily, who had just started for specific hospitals donating the boxes. And we just saw an opportunity to help there. And so then we started, and then now have just expanded it throughout Michigan. That provides support information and keepsake items to families, which is very important. Brochures on father's grief, grandparents' grief, children's grief, lactation after loss, creating keepsakes. There's just a lot of different information that we try to provide to support the whole family and the friends. And so the families feel very supported. Early loss bags, we recognized a few years ago that that's another area, as you know, that's way under supported, way under recognized, and wanted to make sure we were able to reach those families because every loss is a loss. I think we as a society tend to compare losses, and that unfortunately, I think early loss, again, just as unsupported, and people just say, well, just get pregnant and move on, and it's not that easy. So we started providing the early loss bags, the carrying cradles, time. we only had a few hours with Brooke. I believe she had passed on a Friday and didn't have her till early Tuesday morning. So the changes in the body happened pretty rapidly after she was born. The cooling cradle allows time. It slows down the process. We've had families that have kept their babies for 2 days. Some want a few hours, some want a few days. This just gives that family the opportunity if they want to take it. So that, again, from personal experience, we just didn't have enough time. You're in shock, you're tired. I was in labor for a day and a half. It would have been nice to be able to rest maybe for a few minutes and then take more time with my daughter. Let's see, the walk. We have 400 to 500 people that come to the walk every year in October. It really just is a special remembrance day for parents to spend with their family and friends and celebrate their child. So we celebrate the babies, and then we say the walks that they'll never take every October. And again, it's just a special remembrance ceremony. Funding hospital perinatal bereavement training is obviously very important because, again, that time you get is very limited, and the better that hospital staff are trained to encourage and direct and lead families into making those special memories is so important. And I think I covered all and the support meetings. I shouldn't forget the very foundation of what we started. Shared experiences, right? Every loss in life is unique, right? Losing a parent, losing a sibling, a friend, losing a child is another very unique. And I think losing a child during pregnancy or infancy is even more unique. And being able to share that experience with others and get supported from people who really know what it's like is vital. And that's, again, the foundation and something we feel very proud that we've been able to maintain for such a long time. I don't think that's very common in the support world to have a meeting go as long as we've been able to do since February of 2009. Even during COVID, we did switch virtual for a while, but we're back in person.
That's great. And I want to talk a little bit, focus in on these support groups. I think I want to give a clear picture to our listeners to, what is a support group? And I want to start first on why are these support groups important for healing after loss? What have you seen? What have you experienced yourself and seen in others?
So yeah, why they're important, again, I think the shared experience and just being able to share things that might be difficult to share with someone who hasn't experienced a loss. I'll give you an example for me personally. Burying my daughter just had a lot of mental anguish, I think, after just knowing her body was in the ground and when it was winter. It's just hard to process. And I think talking about those things with someone who probably understands that and can appreciate that, or people we've heard in group, people who have cremated their baby, right? And they have the cremains and they want to go on vacation. And what do they do with those, and they don't want to leave them at the house, yet they don't want to carry them with them. And it's those different things, I think, that we experience that the average person doesn't think about. And as a bereaved parent, you think that's my child. And is that normal? That's something I always worried about. Like, is what I'm doing normal, or am I, should this be concerning that I'm thinking about these things? And I think that's very important. A lot of times getting pregnant after a loss and dealing with, do you want to try again? And when do you want to try again? What kind of, in the group, we've heard about medical conditions and things like blood clotting disorders and genetic testing, that we're able to share those experiences and learn from each other and really demand care. At our physician, you learn a lot from other people's experiences. And so I think, again, with the support, just the mental support that it provides, and then just the ongoing support, whatever you choose to do in your family planning after, you're getting that support and knowledge from other individuals that help you along that path.
It's interesting. I think, similarly with our organization, it started from this place of a group of us coming together in town and sharing our experiences, right? Like, this happened to us and we didn't feel supported. And so what can we do together? And so it was sort of from that, the coming together and sharing that it began.
So what does a support group look like? What happens at a support group meeting?
It's a great question. when families do contact me, I make sure I let them know our group, the way we run it is very informal. Meaning, I know a lot of groups are, you have to sign up for, and they have limited numbers. Ours are you come in. We do encourage people to bring a support person with them. It doesn't have to be the other parent. Our only rule is it just has to be an adult. We don't allow kids in the meeting. But we encourage people because we know that's scary, right? Walking into a room of strangers, sharing something very intimate about yourself, something that's devastating, right? One of the worst things that we go through in life. So it could be scary walking in. So we do encourage, if they want, they can bring someone. We do brief introductions. We stress that people don't have to talk if they don't want to. If they're not comfortable sharing their story, they're welcome to just come in and listen, and they're equally able to share their experience if they wish. Typically, we have a topic of conversation just to get things going. So, for example, it might be the holidays are going to be coming up. So we'll have a topic of how do you get through the holidays? How do you get through your first Thanksgiving and Christmas? What are some coping mechanisms? What's some advice from people who've already went through that? One thing with holidays, do you go to holiday events or not? Are there new babies in the family that you're going to see, and how do you handle that? And so it's just advice on things like that. Mother's Day, Father's Day. We typically do crafts around holidays as well. So we'll do something special for Mother's Day and Father's Day, something that the parents, if they wish, can create. Creates, I think, healing right through art and crafting. And then as well, just creating a special keepsake for them to keep and honor their baby.
That's great. One thing we've talked about a little bit is that EPLA and Metro Detroit Share have been partnering for the last 2 years. Can we talk a little bit more about your early loss bags, what those look like? And I just want to focus a little bit on our partnership and what we've been doing together. So can you start with just telling us a little more about those early loss?
One of my most exciting partnerships, I think, that we've done, just because, again, we know that it's such a needed area. I think prior to us partnering, we had done 750 early loss bags just on our own. And they were limited. We had a couple support brochures in there. We had a teddy bear and a couple other small keepsakes. Since then, and when joining our partnership, we obviously include your early loss kits that have the hygiene items in it, has the support information and some keepsakes. And then what we provide in our bag as well is a teddy bear. We include multiple different support brochures. So we've added to those since then. We include a journal. We include it's a little ceramic heart. And I think it's just, I actually have one on my desk. So a lot of times if I'm feeling a little anxious at my desk, I just kind of have it in my hand. And it's just, again, I think it could be used for anxiety. It could be used just as a special keepsake. We do put some additional tea in there. I think you guys have that in yours as well, the chamomile tea. And I think the most important part, again, is that support information, just giving them, especially with the early losses, permission to grieve, permission to recognize their loss, and then how do they cope with that? And we have, I believe, we've done the 1,500 together with ours. So we're at 2,250, and we did just Friday, we delivered 150. So we're actually, I think we are almost out of the bags that we just assembled in April, with plans to do more either in September or October.
Yes, we're really excited gearing up here to get those out to you. Every time we get a load of 500 out the door, it is exciting here. Mm-hmm. I want to talk a little bit, Maria, I want to invite you and Angie to sort of tell the story of how we met. Angie's only 90 minutes down the road from us, but it took a flight to St. Louis to find each other. Maria, I'd like you to start that story. How did you find Angie?
Yes. Well, it's a fun story. So we were I was in the Detroit airport on my way down to that perinatal loss conference in St. Louis. And I saw a woman walking by me in the Detroit airport, and I forget exactly what her shirt said. It was something funny about coffee. And I just thought, that woman, that's a funny shirt, And then I don't know if I saw you getting on the plane, but then the next thing I know, we're in St. Louis and I see you again And at the conference, I'm like, that's the woman with the funny shirt. And then, you came up to our booth, and that's how it got started. So it was just one of those moments where it's like, I think we were supposed to meet, and, not only just at the conference, but with the shirt in the airport. I don't know if you remember what shirt that was or something about coffee.
Oh yeah, yes, it was definitely a coffee shirt, and I was laughing when you were saying it, but yes, it was a coffee shirt, and then I was the crazy lady that kept coming to your guys' booth just because I was so excited to find another group in Michigan, not far, and again, just doing something that we had already kind of started on that journey of trying to better support families, and so yes, I think it was just meant to be.
Mm-hmm. Right. And that's what I think was so, it wasn't just that, hey, that's the person I saw in the airport, but like that you were also from Michigan, also working on the early loss, and we were just getting started with our kids at that time. And we had good response to them at that event. But then, most people said, this is great, keep going. But then you were like, I'll take 500. And we were like, oh, okay.
We'll make 500.
Yeah, we'll do it. And so that was a great start. But yeah, that's always a fun thing to remember.
And I want to talk a little bit, both Maria and Angie, about, so we got involved, I guess it's been 6 years now, since 2016, since we incorporated. And Angie, you said 2009 was the first support group. I want to talk a little bit about the changing culture, the available resources, what's happening, and what we've seen. We were talking about this conference, about the International Perinatal Loss Conference. That was now 4 years ago. What have you guys seen change in the last 4 years, in the last 14 years? What has changed in the loss world?
Yeah, I will take it. February of 2009. What do I think has changed? One, I think, is awareness. Social media, I think, can be your best friend and not best friend, right? Depending on what you're doing. As far as for us, from a support world, a fundraising world, an awareness world, I think it's been great. I think people being able to share their stories out there. Again, for us, it's been vital with fundraising, vital with sharing our events, right? Our fundraising events, our walk. I think that's huge. And again, sharing, unfortunately, as we know, some people are not so nice out in the social media world, though. I think there's been some celebrities, right, that have had losses and have shared photos, and that's hard, right? It's hard to share. I've been very limited with sharing particular photos of my daughter on social media, just because, again, I don't think people always understand. And so that's changed, both in a positive and sometimes negative way. I think that the majority of people are supportive, then you do get that negativity, and that's hard. It's hard to deal with as a grieving parent. I think hospitals are more receptive to support information. I think back the first few hospitals we tried to work with to even just give them money was hard. It was like, we want to give you this stuff, the carrying cradles. And now I don't know if it's just that by word of mouth, that we're more known and one hospital refers us to another. But I have noticed an ease of getting our information out there, which I think is a huge positive. Yeah, I would say that that's really just the awareness. I think it's changed tremendously. And I think the resources that are available, we were lucky our hospital gave us, some information. We didn't leave empty-handed. I certainly don't think it's what we provide, where we really try to cover the entire family and support network with support brochures, support availability, and then things like the caring cradle, that are available to provide time for families where that wasn't necessarily an option. In 2005 when we lost Brooke, that wasn't anything that I'm aware of was even, it might have been in existence. It certainly wasn't prevalent in this area.
Mm-hmm. I think some of the, because I sort of wondered too, why are people more willing to talk about this now? And I think some of it comes from just the sort of increased awareness of mental health. I don't know, over the last handful of years. or the sort of freedom people feel to, which is good, to sort of share hard things that have happened to them. And so this is part of that, like it, even seems like 10 years ago, it was sort of like, oh, do you have depression? Well, keep it to yourself, and that all has sort of shifted. And so we can sort of be a part of that. And then just, people like Emily and others writing things and posting them online. And that's, then people think, oh, if she can talk about it, I can talk about it. Right. So I think we've benefited from that.
One thing I've noticed, there are many doctors and nurses doing really great work on this and trainings and Resolve Through Sharing and other organizations. But one thing I've also noticed is that this has really been a rising of moms caring for moms. Mm-hmm. In our experience, our group, our board right now is all, I call us parent advocates. We are not doctors. We are not nurses. But we really try to be that link between doctors and nurses and families, providing the information, getting out there what we needed in those moments, and explaining to doctors what we need. Angie, has that been your experience as well? Is your group largely, and we have found some amazing doctors and nurses who are willing to work with us, but it's been a lot of moms caring for moms.
Yes, our group, our entire board, minus my best friend who's been there from the onset, are all bereaved parents. So the bulk of the people who do our fundraising, who do our board work, who do our volunteer work are largely bereaved parents, have huge support from the community, as far as, again, funding and coming to volunteer when we do our box and bag assembly. But really the planning part and the behind the scenes are all bereaved parents for the most part.
What do you see? Do you see any for the future of Metro Detroit Share? Do you see you doing more or just sort of continuing to, grow what all the varied services you're already providing?
I would say we'll probably grow. I'm not sure how, but one thing that's always been something I feel passionate about that I would love to do, given the time, is really loss prevention. That is what I would see naturally doing next, is really, things like safe sleep education, prenatal care, what are areas, kick counting. I know, I think it's the Count the Kicks app, I think it's in Idaho, I think is where that originated, if I'm correct. Something like that, of getting with the state and funding that, because that's a very easy way to, when people get to, roughly 28 weeks pregnancy, that they can start doing kick counting as a measure. It's not perfect, but it's a measure of measuring the health of your baby that you can do. Why don't families know that? Why don't moms know to do that? I'm sure some OBs are good at doing that. I had a paper chart, but guess when I found out about kick counting? After I had a loss. So why do we wait to educate moms on doing this very easy, no cost activity until they've had a loss? This should just be a common, and they have an app for it. So you can download it on your phone, lay down and count your kicks and just tap your phone when you feel the baby kick, and it measures it. And if you notice a change, you can go to your OB and you've got it all tracked in an app. So things like that. And there's cribs for kids, where you can provide the pack and play as a safe sleeping space for families at a low cost. It's something I'd love to do. I just lack the time. But yes, if given the right opportunity and given the right funding and time. So I envision that at some point in the future, just because I like to continuously add to my plate once I get things down. And our first goal, though, that I want before I take anything on is getting a cooling unit in every Michigan hospital. So I think statewide, it's a little over 50% now, I think, that has one. We haven't provided all of them, but I think we're at 28, and we just took delivery of 5 last night that will be placed. So we're slowly inching towards that, but I guess I probably won't take on anything new until we finish that goal.
That's great. You're talking about loss prevention. I think one thing that's really difficult in the early pregnancy loss area, specifically miscarriage, before you can feel the kicks, before There's a few things. One, I think moms can take on a lot of guilt on sort of myths of what might have caused your early pregnancy loss. And that's challenging because often it is an unpreventable loss. Similarly, in later loss. But I think another thing that is really difficult for moms to hear, you said, that you didn't know about counting kicks until after you had a loss. Early pregnancy loss, moms are often told, there will be no testing till at least 3 losses. And that's as a mom, that is hard to hear. I'm not a doctor. I don't understand why. I was lucky to receive testing after 2 losses. And that's really hard to say, you need to experience 3 deaths before we start worrying. And that's really, really hard to hear. And I know there's some work being done also on the recurring early pregnancy loss side to say sometimes it can be easy. Sometimes we don't know. And that's a really, really hard space for lost parents. But I think it's good that we continue to educate parents and provide that care. I want to talk here as we come to a close. I want to talk a little bit, Angie, about how people access your services. I know you said you work through hospitals, but how do people find a support group, and what should people do if they need you?
So all of our support information is on our website, metrodetroitshare.org. And so that does list the dates of our support meetings, the location, and also our special events, like our walk coming up on Sunday. I should know the date. I think it's October 4th, October 2nd, sorry, Sunday, October 2nd. And so that information is there. And then if you call the number that's listed on our site, 313-492-1172, you'll get me. So I have kind of kept that number. I've always thought about doing an 800 number or something in routing, but never quite got there. So they can always call and I will connect them either with myself or connect them with another group member that can help.
And can you talk a little bit too about National Share for any listeners that are not in the Detroit area? You mentioned that you work with National Share. Can you explain 2 things? 1, how to get connected with them, and 2, sort of what your relationship is with the National Share organization?
Yes. So yes, National Share is a national organization for pregnancy and infant loss. And so there are various Share chapters throughout the United States. So it's a great resource to check to see if there is a Share support group in your area. And I believe the last I checked, they also include other support, even if they're not a Share chapter, they may have that information on their site. So our relationship with Share, that's where we did our training prior to starting the support group. We do some ongoing trainings with them, with our group members. And then all of our support information that we purchase for our keepsake boxes and early loss bags are purchased from National Share. So it's those resources that they produce and regularly update, we get from them.
Great, thank you. That's really helpful. Is there anything else you would like to add that we didn't cover before we go?
No, I think we've covered a lot today. And again, I love our partnership. I love that we did, along with your organization and Metro Detroit Share, did form that coalition group that I think we need to meet soon. We didn't really meet during COVID. And so I think it'd be a good time to reconnect. And for those listening, we did create a coalition group of all of the pregnancy and infant loss groups that are in, we'll say Michigan, I think more in our area, but I can't just say Southeast Michigan because you guys are a little bit further than that. But just to network and to know what other organizations do. For example, there's the Iconella group that does funeral assistance. We do it only up to 1 year of age, where Iconella does it for both, pregnancy and infant loss as well as child loss. So it's just good to know what other organizations do, because if we can't help them or you can't help them, an area to turn them over to, versus just the worst thing is just telling someone like, I can't help you, and then just leaving them. They're calling you because they need help. And so I think the more resources we can know about and coordinate with, the better to better support families.
Well, it is the vision of the Early Pregnancy Loss Association that nobody suffers pregnancy loss alone. And it is these partnerships with all of these organizations that make that possible. So thank you, Angie, for all of your work and for your commitment to serving women and families who've experienced this loss. Thank you very much. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Hope Blooms, a podcast from the Early Pregnancy Loss Association.
To learn more about how we and you can support women suffering early pregnancy loss, visit our website at miscarriagecare.com or find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thank you for listening.